Have you ever wondered why some older men become magnetic without trying, while others fade into the background? No matter what they do, it's not luck. It's not genetics. And it's definitely not age. Because here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Women don't want an older man. They want what time was supposed to create inside him. And for most men, time created nothing. You can be 45, 50, even 60, and still have the emotional maturity of a 9-year-old boy. You can make money, wear nice watches, talk about experience, and she will still feel nothing. But then there are the other men, the rare ones. The ones who walk into a room and instantly shift the energy without speaking. The ones women feel before they see. The ones whose silence is more seductive than another man's bragging. These men didn't get attractive with age. They got attractive with evolution. And today, you're going to learn the uncomfortable truth. There is only one type of older man women actually want to sleep with, and it has nothing to do with his looks, status, money, or age. Once you understand this, you won't chase validation. You won't try to prove yourself. You won't feel insecure around younger guys. You will understand the energy that makes a woman's guard drop and her desire rise. If you're ready for the truth most men will never be brave enough to face. Let's begin. Most men think women want an older man for the clichés society repeats over and over: experience, stability, confidence, maturity. But if that were true, every man over 40 would be irresistible. And we both know that's not how the world works. Walk into any restaurant, bar, or social event, and you'll see the truth instantly. Some older men disappear into the background. Nobody notices them. Their presence creates no gravity, no tension, no spark. They look tired, not wise, silent, not powerful, still, but not grounded. And then, suddenly, a different man walks in. Same age, same wrinkles, same gray hair. But the moment he steps into the room, something shifts. Women sit up straighter. Conversations pause for half a second. Her eyes flick toward him, even if she doesn't want them to. Her body recognizes something before her mind names it. It's not his looks. It's not his height. It's not his status. It's his evolution. You have to understand this. A woman is not drawn to an older man. She is drawn to the man he became while aging. There are men who age like milk, bitter, spoiled, resentful, fragile, and men who age like oak, strong, steady, rooted, unshakable. Women don't respond to wrinkles. They respond to what built those wrinkles. The storms he survived, the failures he owned, the ego he buried, the discipline he built, the peace he earned. Because here is the psychological truth most men never realize. A woman associates age with leadership, but only if the man has actually done the inner work. And that's where 90% of men disqualify themselves without knowing. They think time automatically turns them into leaders, but time only exposes who you truly are. A man who avoided responsibility in his 20 seconds becomes a fearful 40-year-old. A man who chased women in his 30 seconds becomes an insecure 50-year-old. A man who never learned emotional control becomes a reactive 60-year-old. Age didn't help him. It magnified him. Women feel this instantly, not through logic, but through nervous system level intuition. She can sense when a man's energy is scattered, fragile, insecure, or chaotic. She can feel when he needs her validation to breathe. She can feel when his calm is fake and his confidence is borrowed. And that's why she gives her body to one older man without hesitation, while treating another like a harmless uncle. She is not reacting to his age. She is reacting to his inner stability, his emotional depth, his ability to lead without dominating, his presence, not his performance, his self-mastery, not his self-marketing. This is why so many younger men lose to older men who barely try. A 7-year-old with a great body cannot compete with a 4-5-year-old who has mastered his emotions. A 30-year-old with money cannot compete with a 50-year-old whose presence makes her feel safe without a single word. A 5-year-old with good looks cannot compete with a 60-year-old whose energy carries wisdom, precision, and stillness. And here's the truth most older men never embrace. If you have not developed inner maturity, your age works against you, not for you. Because once a man crosses 40, a woman expects something from him. She expects clarity. She expects emotional discipline. She expects direction. She expects self-mastery. If she looks at you and sees a grown boy instead of a grown man, there is no attraction, only compassion or pity. But when she looks at you and sees a man who lived through storms and transformed instead of collapsed, she feels something deeper than desire. She feels ease. She feels trust. She feels relief. This is the older man she wants to surrender to, not because he's older, but because he's become something younger men haven't reached yet. And if you understand this, truly understand it, you'll never compete with younger men again. You'll operate on a different frequency entirely. Most older men believe women are attracted to what they can see: the gray hair, the life experience, the maturity, the stability. But women are not drawn to a man's image, they're drawn to his energy. And here is the truth no one tells men. Women don't react to your age. They react to the energy your age has created. She doesn't desire an older man. She desires the type of man time has refined, not the man time has merely passed through. This is why a 5-year-old can carry the gravity of a 40-year-old, and why so many 50-year-olds still carry the emotional chaos of a teenager. Women don't look at age. They look at evolution. To a woman, an older man is attractive only if his years have turned into masculine maturity, not just survival. The true magnetism of age doesn't come from how long you've lived, but from what those years have transformed inside you. Time becomes attractive only when it becomes training. A truly compelling older man is not the one who has seen the most, but the one who has understood the most. Women feel this difference immediately, not through logic, but through intuition, through their nervous system. Before you say a word, she feels the steadiness in your emotional world, or the instability inside you, the depth or the emptiness, the grounding or the chaos, the lessons you've integrated, or the wounds you've ignored. You may think you're impressing her with your life experience. You're not. She is reading. What did those years teach you? Did you grow? Or did you simply grow older? Is your energy refined? Or is it exhausted? Are you a man forged by time? Or just a man touched by time? Here's the core truth. Age is attractive only when it produces presence. Age is meaningless when it produces fatigue. Women do not want an older man because he's older. They want an older man because he is softened by wisdom, sharpened by experience, tempered by challenges, and deepened by reflection. Not a man who simply accumulated years, but a man who integrated them. Because when an older man walks into a room with refined energy, a woman feels it instantly. She feels safety, clarity, warmth, steadiness, emotional depth, grounded, masculine energy. Her body responds not to your age, but to the inner order your age created. This is the real separation between an older man who is magnetic and an older man who is simply older. There comes a point in a man's life when he realizes something unsettling. Age does not automatically grant him respect, admiration, or desire. Some men grow older and become more magnetic with every year. Others grow older and slowly fade into the background, becoming invisible to the very women they once hoped to attract. And the painful truth is, this women can tell which one you are within seconds, not through your words, not through your appearance, but through the energy you carry when you walk into a room. Most older men mistakenly believe that attraction declines because youth declines. They assume their competition is younger men, men with more stamina, smoother skin, or fresher confidence. But women aren't comparing older men to younger men. Women are comparing older men to each other, the ones who evolved and the ones who merely aged. The difference between the two is enormous, yet subtle. One man has been shaped by life, the other has been stretched thin by it. One has learned, integrated, and transformed. The other has resisted, avoided, and stalled. And women feel the separation instantly because feminine intuition doesn't react to the surface. It reacts to the state of a man's inner world. An attractive older man is not attractive because he has lived longer. He is attractive because the years have taught him how to carry himself with a depth younger men can't imitate. You feel it the moment you stand near him, the calm that doesn't need to prove itself, the silence that isn't empty but full, the eye contact that doesn't search for validation, the steady presence that comes from someone who has confronted his shadows instead of running from them. His growth is internal, and that's exactly why it radiates externally. This type of older man has taken his experiences, the heartbreaks, the failures, the victories, the disappointments, and turned them into emotional clarity. He no longer reacts impulsively because he has learned the cost of reacting without thinking. He no longer chases validation because he finally understands how cheap validation feels when you have peace inside yourself. He no longer fills silence with noise because he recognizes that silence is where true confidence breathes. A woman feels safe with him, not because he says reassuring things, but because he carries the energy of someone who can navigate storms without drowning in them. This man is rare. and women recognize rarity immediately. And because he is rare, he becomes unforgettable. Then there is the other type of older man, the one who didn't grow, who didn't evolve, who didn't self-reflect. This man survived his years but never integrated them. He talks about his past like a collection of complaints, not lessons. He carries emotional chaos in his shoulders, bitterness in his voice, and insecurity behind every attempt at charm. His age shows up not as wisdom, but as weariness. He is constantly irritated, easily threatened, quick to judge, and even quicker to assume women owe him something simply because he is older. A woman can sense this within minutes. She feels the instability, the emotional leakage, the unresolved internal conflict. She notices that his energy is loud but not strong, dominant but not grounded, expressive but not deep. Loudness is not confidence. Chaos is not masculinity. Performance is not presence. And because he has spent years avoiding the work he needed to do, he becomes difficult to connect with. Time didn't refine him, it exhausted him. This is the man who becomes invisible, not because he is older, but because he stopped growing long before his age ever changed. Women don't ignore him because he's in his 40s, 50s, or 60s. They ignore him because he carries the emotional maturity of the man he once was at 20. And nothing is less attractive to a woman than a man whose age increased but whose depth did not. So here is the harsh truth men avoid. Women are not judging you by your years. They are judging you by what those years turned you into. Did time polish you, or did time weaken you? Did your experiences make you calmer or more reactive? Did life deepen you or make you bitter? A woman can read the answer before you even speak. What separates attractive older men from invisible older men is not a list of accomplishments or external achievements. It is self-awareness. It is emotional regulation. It is the ability to carry wounds without projecting them. It is the discipline to stand firm without becoming rigid. It is the maturity to lead without controlling, to connect without clinging, to express without collapsing. It is the understanding that masculinity is not a performance. It is a quiet, steady inner gravity that pulls everything around it into balance. And the irony is this: the older man who becomes deeply attractive is not trying to be attractive at all. He has outgrown the need. His confidence comes from the life he has rebuilt, not the attention he receives. His authority comes from the storms he has withstood, not the recognition he seeks. His presence comes from the battles he fought internally, not the dominance he imposes externally. This is why women choose him without hesitation. Not because he is older, richer, stronger, or more experienced, but because he is complete. Time did not age him. Time forged him. And that is the difference between an older man who draws women in effortlessly and an older man who disappears even when he's standing right in front of them. Before a woman hears your voice, before she notices your style, before she evaluates your age, your career, or your appearance, she feels something far more primal: your presence. Presence is the silent force that enters a room before you do. It's the energy she senses before she has the language to describe it. And for older men, presence is the single most powerful form of attraction there is. It is the difference between a man she forgets instantly and a man she cannot stop thinking about long after he leaves. Most men misunderstand presence. They confuse it with confidence, charisma, physical strength, or social dominance. But presence is none of these things. It is deeper. It is quieter. It is the emotional gravity of a man who is rooted in himself, calm in his mind, steady in his body, and unapologetically whole. It is what happens when a man has lived long enough to stop performing and finally start being. Women feel presence in their nervous system. It's not logical. It's instinctive. When a man with real presence stands near her, her body relaxes, her breathing slows, her guard lowers, even if she doesn't want it to. She feels grounded, focused, and strangely aware of him, as if his energy fills the space without him having to take up any space at all. Presence is not loud. Presence is not attention-seeking. Presence is a quiet command, a man telling the world without words, "I am here," and nothing inside me is shaking. This is why presence is more attractive than money or looks. A man can buy a suit, a car, or a gym membership, but he cannot buy presence. Presence is earned through inner work, the kind most men avoid their entire lives. It comes from sitting with your emotions instead of numbing them, confronting your weaknesses instead of hiding them, disciplining your impulses instead of obeying them, and learning to move through the world without being constantly pulled by fear, insecurity, or validation seeking. A woman doesn't want an older man who carries regret like a shadow. She wants the man who carries understanding. She doesn't want the man who tries to impress her with achievements. She wants the man whose achievements shaped him, not defined him. She doesn't want the man who talks endlessly about who he is. She wants the man whose silence already shows her. Presence is the way you make her feel without touching her. It's the steadiness in your eyes when she looks at you. It's the calm in your voice when you speak. It's the certainty in your posture when you stand. It's the consistency of your energy when life becomes chaotic. Presence is emotional leadership, the ability to anchor yourself so deeply that she intuitively feels anchored too. You can see the difference clearly when you compare two older men. One fills the room with noise, jokes too loudly, speaks over everyone, tries to dominate attention because he cannot sit with himself. His energy feels restless, disconnected, and forced. Women sense the insecurity behind the volume. The second man moves slower, speaks with intention, listens fully. His energy feels like quiet strength, like someone who doesn't need to chase anything because he already knows what matters. Women sense the depth behind the calm. Women are not drawn to the older man who acts powerful. They are drawn to the older man who is powerful, the man whose inner world is not a battlefield. A woman can feel immediately whether a man is grounded or unstable, whether he is emotionally regulated or emotionally reactive, whether he is living consciously or living on autopilot. Presence reveals it all, because presence has no performance. A man with presence doesn't interrupt. He doesn't rush. He doesn't fidget with anxiety. He doesn't try to outshine anyone. He doesn't fill silence with cheap comments. He has learned that stillness is not weakness, it is authority. And authority is what a woman trusts. Authority is what she respects. Authority is what opens her emotionally, mentally, and even physically. Presence also transforms how you connect. When you listen with attention instead of impatience, she feels understood. When you speak with clarity instead of chaos, she feels safe. When you express without fear and set boundaries without anger, she feels protected. Presence isn't about being perfect, it's about being deeply stable in your emotions, stable in your self-worth, stable in your identity. And here is what most men miss: presence makes desire effortless. A woman cannot help but be curious about a man who feels unmoved by external noise. She cannot help but be drawn to a man who carries himself with quiet clarity. She cannot help but soften around a man whose energy tells her, "Nothing you do scares me. Nothing you feel overwhelms me. Nothing in me collapses." Men often spend their youth chasing women, but the older man with presence discovers that he doesn't need to chase anything. His energy pulls, his stillness invites, his depth intrigues, his certainty seduces. Women don't want him because of his age, they want him because his age produced a presence younger men cannot manufacture. Presence is not the loudest force in the room, but it is always, without fail, the strongest. Every man eventually learns this truth, but most learn it too late. Nothing destroys attraction faster than a man who cannot control himself. Not his career, not his intelligence, not his body, not his charm. A woman can forgive many things, but she cannot trust and therefore cannot desire a man who is ruled by his emotions instead of respected by them. This is where emotional discipline becomes the cornerstone of masculine presence. Especially for an older man, it is not enough to have lived more years. If those years did not teach you how to regulate your reactions, your anger, your insecurities, your fears, your jealousy, your impulses, then you haven't matured. You've only aged. Women do not expect men to be emotionless. They expect men to be emotionally sovereign. To a woman, emotional discipline is not coldness. It is leadership. It is safety. It is power. It tells her, "You can bring your emotions to me. I will not collapse, panic, or lash out. I am grounded." This is the quality that separates an older man who becomes unforgettable from an older man who becomes exhausting. You can see this difference clearly in how a man responds under pressure. The undisciplined man reacts instantly. His emotions burst out of him like a broken dam. He gets offended easily. He takes everything personally. He reads rejection into silence. He assumes the worst. He spirals when things don't go his way. His energy feels unstable, unpredictable, unsafe. Women sense it immediately because instability is not a masculine trait, it's a warning sign. But the older man with emotional discipline operates differently. He breathes before he speaks. He thinks before he reacts. He observes before he assumes. He listens without needing to defend his ego. He stands still when another man would explode. This steadiness is not a performance. It is the result of years of facing himself, his triggers, his weaknesses, his wounds, and building strength where most men build walls. Women feel emotionally safer with such a man than with any amount of money, charisma, or physical strength. Why? Because emotional discipline creates predictability, and predictability creates trust. A woman cannot relax, open up, or surrender into a man she cannot trust emotionally, and she cannot trust a man who cannot trust himself. Emotional discipline also transforms communication. The unstable man turns small disagreements into battles. He raises his voice. He shuts down. He blames. He punishes. He threatens to walk away. None of this comes from strength. It comes from fear. The older man with emotional discipline brings the opposite energy. His calm diffuses tension. His words carry weight because they are measured, not impulsive. His silence is thoughtful, not passive-aggressive. His presence reassures rather than intimidates. He doesn't argue to win, he speaks to understand. He doesn't dominate with volume, he leads with clarity. This is the kind of man a woman feels drawn to mentally, emotionally, and physically, not because he forces her attraction, but because he creates an environment where attraction grows effortlessly. And here is the part men never realize: emotional discipline amplifies desire. A woman may be impressed by a man's muscles. She may admire a man's success. She may notice a man's charm. But she feels safe with a man who is emotionally stable. And safety is the gateway to feminine desire. A woman cannot fully be herself emotionally, mentally, or sexually with a man who feels fragile. Fragility kills attraction. Stability awakens it. Emotional discipline also protects a man from losing himself in relationships. When a man cannot regulate his emotions, he becomes reactive. He over-pursues. He over-invests. He panics when she pulls away. He falls apart when she goes silent. He becomes dependent on her validation, on her replies, on her mood. He stops being a man with a life and becomes a man orbiting around hers. But the emotionally disciplined older man holds his center. He doesn't chase someone who withdraws. He doesn't beg for reassurance. He doesn't crumble in uncertainty. He doesn't cling to potential. He values connection, but not at the cost of self-respect. This balance makes him rare, and rarity makes him desirable. Women feel it instantly when a man is not controlled by his emotional storms. They feel it in the steadiness of his posture, in the tone of his voice, in the way he makes decisions. They know they are dealing with a man who has done the work, who has confronted the parts of himself most men avoid for an entire lifetime. This creates a deeper kind of attraction, an attraction rooted in respect and trust, not fantasy or infatuation. A woman may be drawn to a man for many reasons, but she stays emotionally, mentally, physically for one reason: his emotional stability makes her feel safe enough to surrender. And here is the final truth: emotional discipline is not about controlling her. It is about controlling yourself. It is not about suppressing emotions. It is about regulating them. It is not about being stoic in a cold way. It is about being stoic in a grounded way, present, aware, calm, Women do not want the older man with the biggest muscles, the biggest bank account, or the loudest confidence. They want the older man with mastery over himself, because a man who can lead himself can lead a relationship, and a man who can control himself can be trusted with her heart, her mind, and her body. Emotional discipline is not the final step, it is the foundation. It is the root from which presence grows. It is the soil where real attraction takes shape. And it is the reason some older men become unforgettable, while others disappear into their own chaos. There is a reason some older men become unforgettable to women, not because they're the most handsome, the richest, or the most charming, but because they possess something younger men simply cannot imitate: depth. Depth is the quiet force that makes a woman soften without knowing why. It's the quality that pulls her in emotionally and physically long before she has time to think. Depth is not taught. Depth is earned. Women are not drawn to a man who has lived long. They are drawn to the man who has learned long. A man with depth carries a different weight in his presence, a different tone in his voice, a different stillness in his eyes. You can feel it before he speaks. You can sense it in the way he moves, the way he listens, the way he observes the world without needing to dominate it. Depth is the product of self-reflection, struggle, awareness, healing, and emotional honesty. It is the signature of a man who has met himself fully and is no longer running from anything. A woman can tell, within moments, whether a man has depth or not. She notices it when he responds instead of reacts. She feels it when he listens instead of waiting to speak. She sees it when he maintains his center, even when challenged. Depth shows up not in big gestures, but in small, consistent behaviors that reveal inner truth. Women don't open up to the man who tries to impress them. They open up to the man who makes them feel understood without effort, without pressure, without performance. A man with depth doesn't fear silence because he's not hiding from himself. He doesn't fear emotion because he has learned how to hold it. He doesn't fear connection because he no longer attaches his worth to whether someone stays or leaves. His calmness is not apathy, it is mastery. His groundedness is not coldness, it is awareness. His clarity is not arrogance, it is alignment. Women feel this instantly because the feminine body responds to depth the way a flame responds to oxygen. Depth creates emotional gravity. Gravity creates trust. Trust creates desire. And desire rooted in trust is the most powerful kind. Younger men often try to compensate for their lack of depth with performance showing off, oversharing, projecting confidence, or talking endlessly about accomplishments. But women can sense the emptiness underneath. Depth doesn't need to convince. Depth doesn't chase validation. Depth doesn't need applause. It simply exists. And because it exists, it pulls. Women are not attracted to the older man who is emotionally loud. They are attracted to the older man who is emotionally clear, a man whose internal world has order, a man whose emotions don't spill out uncontrollably, a man who has processed his pain instead of projecting it. This type of man becomes a sanctuary for a woman, not a storm she needs to survive. Depth also reveals itself in a man's relationship with his past. The ordinary older man clings to regret, bitterness, and unresolved wounds as if they are proof of how life wronged him. But the older man with depth has turned his wounds into wisdom. He has taken the parts of his life that broke him and used them to build a stronger, calmer, more discerning version of himself. Women don't admire perfection, they admire transformation. They admire the man who faced darkness and returned with light in his hands. A man with depth embraces emotional nuance. He understands that sadness is not weakness. Vulnerability is not helplessness. And love is not surrendering his identity. He does not repress emotion, he regulates it. He does not avoid intimacy, he chooses it carefully. He does not fear being misunderstood, he expresses himself with purpose. This creates a sense of emotional maturity that women rarely encounter. And here is the truth most men will never understand. Depth is what makes a woman want to surrender emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. She surrenders to the man she trusts. She trusts the man who understands himself. She desires the man who understands her. Depth allows a man to see beyond the surface. He doesn't react to a woman's emotions, he reads them. He doesn't collapse under her intensity, he anchors it. He doesn't interpret her feelings as threats, he recognizes them as signals. This makes him not only attractive, but irresistible. Depth also influences how a man navigates connection. While others chase constant attention, a man with depth values meaningful presence. While others fear solitude, a man with depth uses solitude to grow. While others lose themselves in relationships, he maintains individuality without withdrawing affection. This balance independence without distance, closeness without clinginess, is deeply attractive to women. Women don't articulate this consciously, but they feel it. They feel the difference between a man who wants them to fill his emptiness and a man who invites them into his fullness. One repels, the other seduces without effort. The older man with depth becomes memorable because he offers something rare in a world full of shallow performance, a genuine, grounded emotional experience. He makes a woman feel not only desired but understood, not only seen but safe, not only wanted but respected. That combination is the spark behind deep feminine surrender. Depth is not the most visible trait, but it is the most felt. It is the quality that makes a woman think about you when she shouldn't. It is the energy that lingers in her mind after a short conversation. It is the reason she feels drawn to you even when she doesn't know why. Depth is the quiet voice inside her whispering, "This man is different." And she's right. He is. Up until this point, you've learned the truth. Most men spend their entire lives avoiding women. Don't fall for the older man because of his age, his money, or his history. They fall for the older man who has become someone through time. Someone refined, someone grounded, someone whose presence speaks louder than his words. But here is the part that matters most. None of this is something you are simply born with. These qualities are built, forged, chosen, and every man reaches a moment when he must decide which path he is going to walk, the path of the man who ages or the path of the man who evolves. Most men spend their lives studying women, trying to decode their reactions, their signals, their preferences, their desires. But the truth is brutally simple. The key is not understanding her signals. The key is becoming the man who creates the right signals from her naturally. The moment you shift your attention from "what does she want" to "who am I becoming?", everything about your relationships transforms. Women are not waiting for the perfect man. They're waiting for the whole man, the man who has faced himself and come out the other side with clarity instead of confusion, with intention instead of impulse, with depth instead of emptiness. This is the man who turns time into strength, pain into wisdom, solitude into power, discipline into presence. The path to becoming that man doesn't begin with impressing women. It begins with meeting yourself honestly. When you strip away distraction, noise, ego, comparison, and insecurity, what remains? Are you proud of the man you are when no one is watching? Do you pursue excellence because it's who you are, or only when someone else is there to validate it? Do you lead your life with intention, or do you drift hoping things magically fall into place? Do you respond to difficulty with ownership or avoidance? These questions matter because women do not connect with your image. They connect with your identity. They respond to the man who has self-respect, not the man who demands respect. They surrender to the man who carries emotional stability, not the man who performs confidence he doesn't actually have. They give themselves to the man whose internal world is a place of order, not chaos. To become this kind of man, you must shift your focus from chasing outcomes to building your internal architecture. This means developing emotional discipline so you are no longer thrown around by impulses or reactions. It means cultivating presence so deeply that your silence has more impact than another man's performance. It means embracing depth so thoroughly that you remain rooted even in uncertainty. It means integrating your past instead of running from it, reflecting instead of repeating, choosing growth instead of comfort. It also means raising your standards not for others, but for yourself. The man women desire isn't the one who demands more from women. He is the one who demands more from himself. More clarity, more truth, more purpose, more discipline, more ownership. When a man becomes this version of himself, something remarkable happens. He stops chasing connection, and connection starts chasing him. He stops trying to prove his worth, and his worth becomes undeniable. He stops performing masculinity, and masculinity becomes his natural state. He stops asking, "What do women want?" because he realizes women want the man who is whole within himself. When a man reaches this stage, he becomes the kind of older man women long for, not because he manipulates desire, but because he embodies what the feminine instinctively trusts. He becomes the man a woman wants to open up to, surrender to, and give herself to without hesitation, not because he tries to pull her in, but because his strength, maturity, clarity, and emotional leadership make her feel safe enough to walk toward him. And this is the shift that turns the entire video into something bigger than attraction. This is about becoming the man you were supposed to be. Most men age into regret. A few men age into wisdom. But the rarest men, the men women desire most, age into power. Not power over others, but power over themselves. And if you choose that path, you don't just become attractive, you become unforgettable. If you've made it to this moment, something inside you has already shifted. You didn't just listen to a video about attraction, you walked through a mirror. You saw the version of yourself that ages without evolving, and the version of yourself you were always meant to become. And now you understand what most men never will. Women don't give themselves to the older man because of his age. They give themselves to the man who used time to build himself, sharpen himself, deepen himself. That's why this message matters. Because the truth is simple and brutal. You don't become irresistible by chasing someone. You become irresistible by becoming someone. The world is full of men who grow older, but very few grow stronger, calmer, wiser, deeper. Very few turn their scars into insight, their pain into patience, their years into mastery. Very few take responsibility for their emotional world and rise above their impulses. But if you're still here, listening, absorbing, reflecting, you're not like most men. You're already walking the path. So don't stop here. Don't let this be another video you forget tomorrow. Use it, apply it, build with it. Let it reshape the man you choose to be. And if you're ready for the next step, if you want the tools to master presence, emotional discipline, depth, confidence, and grounded masculine leadership, then don't do this alone. Subscribe to this channel, because every video here is designed to sharpen you, to challenge you, to rebuild you from the inside out. And when you're ready to go deeper, when you're ready to rise above the noise, when you're ready to become the man time cannot weaken, stay with us. Your evolution starts now.